The mop left a clean streak across the dark floor, and Ward Osei followed it with his eyes the way a painter follows a brushstroke. Not with pride, just habit that he had been cleaning the archive wing of Arriva Station for 4 years. 4 years of polishing glass cases that held things worth more than entire planets. For years of mopping around pedestals that carried the bones of dead civilizations. And not once had he broken anything, lost anything, or been thanked for anything. That was fine. Ward was not the kind of man who needed to be thanked. He moved his bucket to the next row. The archive wing was quiet at this hour. The kind of quiet that had weight to it, like the whole room was holding its breath. The overhead lights ran on a dim night setting, and everything glowed faintly blue. Display cases lined both walls, each one sealed behind pressure locks and climate control. Inside them sat masks, weapons, scrolls, bones, and things Ward had no name for. He did not think much about what they were. He thought about whether the glass was clean. Near the far end of the wing, there was a case he always paused at. Not because it was special to him. It was just the one that always seemed to collect the most smudges, and he had never figured out why. The plaque on it read, in 7 different languages, the same thing. He had read the human translation enough times to remember it. Hollow crown of giraffe. Ceremonial artifact. Status. Inert. Inside the case sat something that did not look like much. A ring of dark metal, rough at the edges, with no jewels or decoration. It looked like someone had bent a piece of scrap into a circle and called it royalty. Ward had seen it so many times it had stopped being interesting somewhere around year 2. He sprayed the glass and wiped it down in slow circles. Footsteps came from the side corridor. Short, quick ones. Ward knew those footsteps. Rena came around the corner, holding 2 cups of station coffee, one in each hand, with the careful walk of someone who had learned not to trust the floors on the older sections of the station. She was young, maybe 25, with close-crop hair and a technician's badge clipped to her collar. She held out one of the cups. "You're the only person I know," she said, "who looks relaxed in here." Ward took the cup. "It is quiet. It is creepy." She looked at the rows of display cases. All these old things just sitting here. They are not doing anything. That is what makes it creepy. Ward drank. The coffee was bad. The way station coffee always was, like it had been made by a machine that had only been told about coffee secondhand. He drank it anyway. Rena leaned against the wall. "Big news tomorrow. Did you hear?" "No." "Sovereign Tyreth is coming. Draven Empire. Full delegation." She said it the way someone says a name they have been hearing all day and are already tired of. The summit starts in the morning. They are rerouting foot traffic away from this whole section. Extra security, the full thing. Ward looked at his mop bucket. "They're going to need me out of here earlier?" "Probably." Selnu sent a notice to all maintenance. "Wants everything perfect by 6th hour." Archivist Selnu. Ward pictured the small, many-armed Polvari with their constant expression of mild panic. "I will be done by 5th. Rena finished her coffee and set the empty cup on the edge of her cart. "You are not even a little curious?" "A sovereign, Ward. The head of one of the biggest empires in the known galaxy, right here on this station." Ward thought about it for a moment. "Does he need his floors mopped?" Rena stared at him. Then she laughed, shook her head, and pushed her cart toward the exit. "Good night, Ward." "Good night." Her footsteps faded. The wing went quiet again. Ward finished the row he was on. He ran his cloth along the base of the hollow crown's case, catching the grime that built up in the seam. He looked at the crown one more time through the clean glass. An old piece of dark metal, sitting still. 3,000 years of sitting still, that he moved on, that he did not see what happened after he turned the corner. He did not see the faint pulse of light that moved through the crown's center, slow and deep, like the first beat of something waking up. It came and went in less than 2 seconds. The case's internal sensors logged a minor fluctuation and filed it as irrelevant. Ward was already at the next row, running his mop in straight, even lines. He had 4 more sections to finish before 5th hour, and the main corridor near docking bay 3 always took extra time, because the foot traffic left black marks near the joints in the floor plating. He was thinking about that. The crown sat in its case in the dark, quiet, and still, the way it had been for a very long time. Almost still. Dust did not stay long in the archive wing when Ward was on shift. But that morning, the Dust had company. That be why the time Ward arrived for his early sweep. 6 Draven guards were already posted at the entrance. They were tall, scaled, and stood with the kind of stillness that was not relaxed but controlled. Ward showed his maintenance badge. The guard closest to the door scanned it, looked Ward up and down once, and stepped aside without a word. Inside, Archivist Selnu was already there, moving between display cases with a data tablet and the expression of someone who had not slept. Selnu species, the Polvari, had 4 arms and a narrow body, and when they were anxious, they tended to use all 4 arms at once. Right now, 3 of them were gesturing while the 4th took notes. Selnu spotted Ward and crossed the room in quick, short steps. You. Good. Listen carefully. Do not speak to the Sovereign. Do not look directly at the Sovereign for more than 2 seconds. Do not touch any display case while the delegation is in the wing. Do not use the wheel bucket. Use the flat carrier. The wheels make noise. Selnu paused. Do you understand? Yes, Ward said. Good. The delegation walks through at the 9th hour as part of the official station tour. You will have finished the east side by then and moved to maintenance storage. Yes. Yes. Selnu was already walking away before the second yes was finished. Ward got to work. The east side took him through the oldest part of the archive, where the cases were larger and the objects inside them were stranger. He moved carefully, the flat carrier sliding silently over the floor. He cleaned, he wiped, he checked corners. The guards watched him with the bored attention of people who had been told to watch everything. By 8th hour. He was nearly done. He could hear the delegation before he saw them. Not because they were loud, because the station itself seemed to change when they entered. The air pressure felt different, or maybe that was just Ward's imagination. Voices in the corridor, formal and low. He moved toward the storage alcove at the end of the east row. He was almost there when he stopped. He stopped because Sovereign Tyreth had entered the wing, and even Ward, who was not easily impressed, felt the shift in the room. Tyreth was old. That was the first thing. Old in the way that mountains were old, where the age had become part of the structure. His scales were deep green-gray, and he wore no crown, no decoration, only dark formal clothing that looked like it had been pressed by someone who was afraid of him. He moved slowly, but not weakly. The slowness was the choice of someone who had never needed to hurry. He walked the wing with his delegation behind him and Orvain at his right shoulder. Orvain was younger, smoother, and watched everything with careful, quiet attention. Ward stepped into the alcove and stayed still. Tyreth moved down the row of cases. Stopped. Moved on. Stopped again. He stopped longest at the hollow crown. Ward could see him from where he stood, partly hidden by the alcove frame. Tyreth stood in front of the case and looked at the crown for a long time. No one in the delegation spoke. The guards near the entrance held their positions. Even Selnu, hovering near the back of the group, went perfectly still. Tyreth looked at the crown. The crown did nothing. After a long moment, Tyreth turned away. His face showed nothing. Orvain, behind him, glanced at the case for just a second longer than everyone else. Then he turned away too. The delegation moved on. The wing emptied. Selnu let out a long breath that used at least 2 of the 4 arms to accompany it. Ward waited until they were gone. Then he stepped out of the alcove, picked up his carrier, and finished the last 2 sections of the east side. He did not know what he had just seen. He did not know that the moment at the crown's case had made Orvain's expression go very slightly, almost invisibly, lighter. He did not know that the crown had been the whole reason for this stop on the tour. He did not know any of it, that he found a scuff mark near the base of the last display case and bent down to clean it. 5th hour came and went. The archive wing was spotless. Ward filed his shift log, returned his equipment to storage, and went to eat a meal that was only slightly worse than the coffee from the night before. Somewhere behind him, in the locked and silent wing, the delegation's footsteps had already faded into the station's hum. The crown sat in its case, waiting, in the patient way of things that have already waited 3,000 years and have learned that waiting is just another kind of readiness. On the 3rd day of the summit, Ward was given a simple task: The archive wing had a scheduled gap in activity between the 9th and 11th hours while the delegation attended a formal session in the council block. Selnu wanted the central aisle recleaned because a group of station officials had walked through that morning and left marks. Ward was given the gap, a flat carrier, and the same rules as before delivered through a voice message because Selnu was too busy to say them in person. Ward arrived at the 9th hour. The wing was empty. He started at the entrance and worked inward, the way he always did. Clean path behind him, unclean path ahead. He had a rhythm to it that did not require thought, which meant his mind was free to go wherever it wanted, and it usually went nowhere. In particular, he was halfway down the central aisle when he heard the side door to IT open with the short double tone that meant staff access, and Archivist Selnu came through it at speed, carrying a tall stack of data tablets in two arms while the other two tried to manage the door. The stack was too wide for the grip, and Ward could see it starting to lean before Selnu noticed. He moved without thinking. He covered the distance in 4 steps and got both hands under the tablets, just as the top half of the stack came free. He caught them. Selnu, thrown forward by the shift in weight, stumbled, and Ward caught the archivist too, one arm across Selnu's narrow back, steadying them both. For a second, they just stood there. Ward holding a stack of tablets. Selnu gripping his sleeve with 2 hands. "I have you," Ward said. Selnu made a sound that was probably the Pulvari equivalent of a very embarrassed thank you and immediately started checking the tablets for damage. Ward set the stack carefully on the floor and straightened up. That was when he heard the soft click. He turned. The impact of the stumble had carried them both into the base of the Hollow Crown's display case. One of Selnu's tablets had hit the panel on the side of it. The control panel's light had gone from green to amber. A second later, the case unsealed. The lock disengaged with a clean, mechanical sound, and the front panel shifted open 2 centimeters on its hinge. Both of them stared at it. Selnu made a different sound. A worse sound. "The seal," Ward said. "I know." Selnu was already at the panel, for hands working, trying to get the case to re-engage. The panel flickered. Something in the tablet impact had confused the lock mechanism. "It is not responding. The manual override needs the curator code, and I have to find it in the 3 arms or checking tablets." One was still at the panel. "Do not touch the case. Do not touch anything inside the case. Do not." The crown shifted. Ward saw it. Just a small movement, a millimeter at most, but the crown was sitting on a slight angle in its stand, and the vibration from the impact had set it rocking. Slow, back and forth, that IT was going to slide. Ward reached IN.IT was not a decision. It was the same motion as catching the tablets, the same motion as steadying Selnu. Something was going to fall, and his hands moved to stop it. He closed his fingers around the crown, just enough to hold it steady on its stand. The room went white. Not blinding, not painful. A deep, full, even light that came from the crown itself and passed through the back of Ward's hand and up his arm and spread into the air around them both. It was warm. It lasted for 6 seconds. Then it stopped. Ward stood there holding the crown with both hands, blinking. The light was gone. The crown was still. In his hands it felt like old metal, which was exactly what it was. Slightly rough at the edges. Lighter than he expected. He looked at Selnu. Selnu was completely motionless. All 4 arms had dropped to their sides. The data tablet that had been in hand was on the floor. Selnu was staring at Ward the way someone stares at something they have no category for. "Did I break it?" Ward asked. Selnu said nothing. Ward set the crown carefully back on its stand. He stepped back. He looked at his own hands, which looked exactly the same as always. The case lock suddenly re-engaged on its own, the panel going from amber back to green with a small, satisfied chime. Ward picked up his flat carrier. "I will finish the aisle," he said. Selnu still had not moved. 3 minutes later, the station security alert sounded through the archive wing. Not an emergency tone. The other one. The tone that meant something had happened that nobody had a protocol for yet. Ward stood at the end of the aisle, holding his carrier, and waited to find out how much trouble he was in. Nobody shouted at Ward. That was the first sign that things were more serious than he thought. When people were normally in trouble on the station, someone shouted. Supervisors shouted. Security shouted. Selnu, when a junior archivist mishandled a relic, could generate considerable volume from a very small body. But the 4 security officers who arrived in the archive wing 6 minutes after the alert spoke quietly and showed him to a chair with careful, deliberate politeness. That was worse than shouting. Ward sat in the chair. The crown was back in its sealed case. The lights in the wing were at full brightness now, and 2 of the security officers were looking at the case without touching it while a 3rd stood near the door and the 4th stood near Ward. "You do not need to stay in the chair," the 4th one said. "It is not a detention." "I know," Ward said. "It is more comfortable than standing." The officer looked at him. "Someone will come to speak with you shortly." Ward nodded. Shortly turned out to be 12 minutes, and in those 12 minutes Ward thought about whether he still had a job. He had not damaged the crown. He had prevented it from falling. The case had opened because of the tablet impact, which had been an accident involving Selnu, not him. He had a reasonable argument. He had been doing his job. The door opened, and Rena came through at its speed, which was not standard procedure, but she had a way of moving fast through secure areas by looking like she belonged there. She came directly to Ward and crouched in front of the chair, so her voice would not carry. "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Ward." She looked at him hard. "Do you understand what happened? The case opened by accident. I stopped the crown from sliding. It lit up. I put it back." Rena put one hand over her eyes. Took a breath. "The crown of Drav. Do you know what it is?" "Old Draven artifact." It said inert on the plaque. It said inert because it has been inert for 3,000 years. Her voice was very low. "In Draven culture, the crown responds to the ruler of the empire. That is the belief. That is not a small belief, Ward. That is the foundation of their entire line of succession. If the crown lights up for someone, it means that someone has the right to rule. If it does not light up for someone," she paused. "Tyra stood in front of that case yesterday, and nothing happened." Ward was quiet for a moment. "And then it happened for me." "Yes, because I was stopping it from falling." "That does not matter." "It matters to me," Ward said. "I was not trying to do anything with it. I was just Ward." She looked at him with her most serious face, which he had seen only twice before. "Orvain is already talking. I do not know what he is saying yet, but I know he is saying it loudly and to the right people. This is not about what you intended. This is about what it looked like and what it means in a culture where that crown has not worked in 3 millennia. Ward thought about that. "Am I going to lose my job?" Rena stared at him. "That is what you were worried about. It is a good job." She straightened up, rubbed her face with both hands, and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then she looked back at him. "I do not know what is going to happen, but I need you to stay here and not say anything to anyone until someone official comes to speak with you. Can you do that?" "Yes." She left. Ward sat in the chair. 20 minutes later, the door opened again, and it was not a security officer. It was Sovereign Tyreth. He came in alone except for 2 guards who stayed at the door. He crossed the wing slowly and stopped in front of Ward. Ward stood up because it seemed like the right thing to do, not because he felt he needed to. Tyreth looked at him the way very old things look at things they cannot classify. Quiet, thorough, without any urgency. "You are the cleaning worker," Tyreth said. His translator spoke the words in flat station standard. "Yes," Ward said. "Sit," Tyreth said. And then, after Ward sat, Tyreth stood in silence for a moment. "Do you know what you have done?" Ward thought about lying. He was not a person who lied, but he considered it briefly. He decided against it. "I stopped it from falling," Ward said. "I did not mean to cause a problem. If I did, I'm sorry for that." The silence stretched. Tyreth looked at the crown's case. Then back at Ward. He did not say anything else. He turned and walked back to the door. Ward watched him go to the threshold. Tyreth paused without turning. "You will remain available," he said. Then he left. Ward sat in the chair for a while longer. He was fairly sure he still had a job, but he was less certain than he had been an hour ago. Ward was moved to a guest room on level 6, which was 3 levels above where maintenance staff usually stayed. The room had a window. The food that arrived was real food, not the reprocessed kind. Ward ate it and looked out at the dark. Rena visited in the evening and stood at the window while she talked. Orvain had spent the last day making noise. Not loud noise. Quiet, directed noise, the kind that moved through the right ears and arrived already amplified. He had framed the story as a sign. The crown had refused the sovereign and accepted a foreigner, a common laborer, a human. He was not calling for Tirith's removal directly. He was simply asking questions that pointed in that direction. Tirith's inner circle had split. One side said the crown had malfunctioned. The case had opened by accident. The contact was without ceremony or intent. The activation meant nothing. The other side said intent had never been part of the crown's history, that the old text said nothing about intent, only contact. Neither side had won yet. The summit is still running, Rena said. Barely. 2 of the trade sessions have been postponed. The station director is trying to hold the schedule together, but if Orvain keeps pulling threads, the whole thing could fall apart before the final agreements are signed. Ward finished the food and set the tray aside. What do they want from me? I do not think anyone knows yet. She turned from the window. The faction that says it was a malfunction would want a statement from you that could be read as meaningless contact. The faction that says it was real would want you to claim nothing, so the story keeps its weight. Orvain wants the ambiguity. It is more useful to him than any answer. Ward thought about it. Can I write something? He asked. Rena blinked. What do you mean? A statement. Just what happened. In order. Why I saw what I did, why I did it. That is not how Draven politics works, Ward. I know, but maybe it should be. He was not being clever. He meant it plainly. If someone is making a decision based on what happened, they should know what actually happened. Not a version of it. The real thing. Rena was quiet for a moment. If you write something plain and honest, Orvain's side can still use it. They can say the intent does not matter, that the contact was real, and that is all the crown needs. Then they can say that. But at least the honest version is also in the room. She looked at him for a long time. Then she pulled a small writing pad from her technician's belt and put it on the table. Ward wrote for about 20 minutes. He did not use complicated language because he did not have complicated language. He wrote what happened from the beginning. The tablets, the stumble, Selnu nearly falling, the case opening, the crown moving on its stand, his hands going out, the light. He wrote that he did not know why the crown had responded and that he was not claiming it meant anything about him. He wrote that he had been trying to do his job, which was to stop things from breaking, that he signed it with his name and his job title. Wardo say. Maintenance, Grade 2. Archive Wing, Arriva Station. Rena read it. She folded it once. I know someone on the Sovereign staff, she said. Not Orvain's side. Okay, Ward said. She left with the note. Ward looked out the window at the stars. They were the same stars he could see from the maintenance quarters 3 floors down. The window was bigger here, but the stars were the same that he did not think about empires or crowns or succession. He thought about the archive wing and whether the scuff marks near case 14 had been logged in the maintenance record or whether he had forgotten to note them. He was fairly sure he had forgotten that he made a note to himself on the corner of the writing pad. Then he went to sleep because the bed was much better than the one in maintenance quarters, and it seemed like a waste not to use it properly. The message came in the morning. Not through the security officers, not through Selnu, not through the station director's office. A short note delivered by a single aide who knocked, handed it to Ward, and left without speaking. The Sovereign requests a meeting. 9th hour. Archive Wing. No delegación. No guards beyond the door. Ward read it twice. Then he washed his face, put on a clean version of his work clothes because it was the only other set of clothes he had with him, and went. The archive wing was empty when he arrived. The lights were at their normal setting, and the cases stood in their rows the way they always did. Ward stood near the center of the room and waited. Tirith arrived at exactly the 9th hour. He came alone, no aide, no Orvain, no guards visible beyond the entrance. He walked to the middle of the room and stopped a short distance from Ward. There was no table between them, no formal arrangement. Just 2 people standing in a room full of old things. Tirith spoke first. I read your account. Okay, Ward said. 3 times. Tirith looked at the Crown's case. It is a very short account. It was a short event. Tirith was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that Ward had not expected. The Crown did not respond to me. Ward said nothing. Before the summit, in a private test, with no witnesses beyond my closest advisors. Tirith's voice was steady, but it was the steadiness of someone who had worked at it. I have ruled for 60 years. I have never questioned my right to rule. Not once. And then a cleaning worker touched an artifact by accident, and the question answered itself in front of me. He paused. What does that mean to you? Ward thought about it carefully. I think, he said, that it does not mean I am supposed to rule anything. I would be very bad at it. He looked at the crown's case. I think maybe the crown does not care about bloodlines. Maybe it never did. Maybe it responds to something else, and no one chose to look at it that way because the bloodline explanation was more useful. Tyrith looked at him. Useful to who? To whoever was already in power. The silence that followed was long. Ward did not try to fill it. Tyrith turned to face the case directly. My advisors want me to declare the activation invalid. Technical fault. Your written account helps that case. An accidental contact with no ceremony, no intent. He paused. Orvain wants me to say nothing and let the story run, because the uncertainty weakens me, and he prefers me weakened. What do you want? Ward asked. Tyrith looked at him. It was a strange look, not hostile, not warm, but real in a way that his public face had not been. I want to know what you want, Tyrith said. You hold more political weight right now than you understand. What is it that you are asking for? Ward answered without hesitating because he had not needed to think about it. I want my job back. I like cleaning. It is quiet and I am good at it. Tyrith stared at him. Then something happened that Ward would never be able to fully describe later. The old sovereign's face moved. Not much. A shift at the corner of the mouth. A short sound, rough and unpracticed, like a mechanism running for the first time after a long stop. It was a laugh. Quiet and brief and completely genuine. 60 years, Tyrith said, more to himself than to Ward. 60 years of people telling me what they need, what they want, what I owe them. He looked at the Crown's case one last time. And the only honest answer I have received on this station came from a man with a mop. He turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he stopped. You have your job, he said, and I will return to the table and finish what I came here to do. He left. Ward stood in the empty wing for a moment. Then he went to the supply alcove, collected his flat carrier and his cleaning cloth, and got back to work. Case 14 still had those scuff marks at the base. He had been meaning to get to them for 2 days that he crouched down and started cleaning. Behind him, in its sealed case, the hollow crown of Drav sat still and dark and said nothing at all, the way a thing says nothing when it has already said enough. Ward polished the glass until he could see his own reflection in it. Then he moved on. End of story.